Welcome to the Full Nielsen. Today I'm going to be reviewing this Zastava M70. The model number for this rifle is ZR7762XR. I love the way that this rifle looks, and it's the main reason that I purchased it. I also like the functionality of this rifle. I like the M-LOK handguard, both the way that it looks and how easy it is to mount a red dot if you wanted to mount a red dot way up here on it and forego using the optics mount back here. The ease of being able to mount a weapon light, a bipod, or drop it onto a tripod. So I like the functionality aspect and the aesthetics that this handguard brings to the table. I also like this optic mount back here. I like the way that it looks, and functionally it seems to be pretty sound. I didn't know this, but it's stamped UTG. It's manufactured by them. I've had mixed experiences with UTG products. Some of them are very well built, and that seems to be more the norm nowadays. But in their earlier days, it was all garbage, in my opinion, most of what they were producing. So I haven't had any issues with this optics mount. I think it's functional and works great and has held zero and all that stuff. So I like that aspect of the gun. I also like how reliable the gun has been, which is no surprise considering it's an AK. Most AKs are reliable, and this one has been 100% reliable for me so far. I like the Magpul furniture on it, both the grip and the buttstock. I'm a huge fan of this Magpul buttstock, which is the Zukov buttstock. From a functional perspective, I have seen that these are not always the most durable. I haven't had any problems with mine, but I've seen some other people who have reviewed them or torture tested them or whatever and have had problems with them breaking. From a functional point of view, they're hard to beat because they give you an adjustable length of pull. They allow you to fold the stock. And one of the features that I don't hear people talk about often, but it's a big deal to me, is the ability to add these pieces to get your cheek weld exactly the way that you want it. For somebody like me that's used to shooting precision rifles, I really like that feature because I don't feel like I have to compromise and do some chin weld or some wonky thing. And I personally believe that having a good consistent cheek weld makes it a lot easier to shoot a rifle well. So that's my opinion. So that's probably the gist of the things that I really like about the rifle. As far as the things that I'm not too fond of, I don't care for this radial muzzle brake that it comes with, or flash hider, whatever. I'm assuming that it's a radial brake and not a flash hider because I don't believe it does a very good job of hiding any sort of muzzle flash, and it doesn't do a very good job at mitigating recoil either. I'll probably swap this out for something that is like an M72 severe duty style muzzle brake. That's more of a cal induction brake, which has ports angled rearward towards the shooter. They're very loud, but they are very effective at mitigating recoil. So this is probably going to get changed. Not a fan of the muzzle device that it comes with. The other thing that I'm not a huge fan of with it is the trigger that it comes with. While it's probably okay for an AK trigger, decent, it's not as good as like an ALG trigger that can be had for a pretty reasonable price of like $65 on Palmetto State's website. So I changed that out. Also not a fan of the safety selector switch it comes with. The safety selector switch it comes with is shorter than this, which is not a problem. But it does not have this tab to easily manipulate the safety. In my opinion, this was I can't understand why anybody who's run an AK with one of these tabs would not want it on every AK they own. I put them on every AK I own if they don't come with them from the factory. So I bought this from Palmetto State Armory and swapped it out. Now, one of the issues with doing that was the old one had an indent on the safety selector that interfaced with this groove that's been cut. I had to drill my own, and I just dimpled the receiver right here so that it would fit the dimple of this, and it works perfectly. It works as good as any of my factory AKs by doing it that way that came with this same type of safety selector on there. So I'm not a huge fan of the safety selector the way that it comes from the factory. So that's probably the main things that I didn't like about it or that I've changed on it. There's one other thing that this is kind of a like and a dislike. I love the forend, the functionality, the aesthetics. I'm not a fan of the weight of it. it adds a lot of weight to the front end of the gun compared to, let me grab one of my other AKs here. This is one of my favorite AKs, which is my AKE from Palmetto State Armory. Compared to this rifle, I bet that this gun weighs at least a pound and maybe a pound and a half to 2 pounds more than my Palmetto State Armory AKE does. And all of that weight is because of this forend. For any of you who have very much experience with shooting rifles freehand or any of that, you know that adding weight to the front end of your rifle can take that rifle from feeling like a light, handy, quickly, easy to transition rifle to a rifle that feels clunky and kind of bloated and something that you don't really want to hold up for a long period of time or you wouldn't really want to carry. So that brings me to kind of my final points with this of some of the situations where I think this rifle would excel and be a really good choice, and some of the situations where it wouldn't. So the first area where it would excel is if you're buying this kind of like I did, primarily for the aesthetics and it being more of a range toy and not really having a serious intent for the rifle. That's great a great application for it if you like the looks of it. If you don't like the looks of it and it doesn't appeal to you, then obviously you're not going to buy it. Now, other situations where I think it would work well are as a home defense rifle. You can easily put a red dot and a weapon light on it. You're not carrying it long distances. You're probably not going to have to keep the rifle presented for prolonged periods of time. That's a situation where I think this rifle would really excel. Hunting from a blind. And I know some people will scoff, you shouldn't hunt with an AK, and that's nonsense. The AK platform is an excellent platform to hunt with, assuming that you understand the limitations, meaning you're using appropriate ammunition at appropriate distances. If you're slinging rounds at big game at 500 yards with an AK, you're an idiot. That's just how I feel about it. Now, if you're using an AK at, 200-300 yards, depending on the size of the game, for me, my limitations with something like an elk could probably be maybe 100 yards. With the deer, maybe 200 yards. With a coyote, probably 300 yards. And I have the ability to put an LPVO or other rifle scopes on here and adjust the cheek rest and get my dope to where I could probably shoot an AK better at 500 yards than most people could shoot their 30-06 at 200 yards. That's just depends on the level of proficiency of the shooter and understanding the limitations of different platforms. But anyway, so it would be good hunting from a blind at close distances, in my opinion, assuming that you're hunting, appropriate game, appropriate bullets at the appropriate distances. Now, I want to go through the situations where, the last situation I want to describe where a rifle like this would be great is as a urban DMR rifle. What I mean by that, you've heard the term designated marksman rifle. Well, designated marksman rifles don't have the level of accuracy that a full-blown precision rifle would have, or a sniper rifle or something like that would have. So I know some of you are going to scoff at the idea of this, but hear me out. If you took a rifle like this, you can easily drop something like this into a tripod. And then if you put an appropriate optic on it, whether that's an LPVO or a regular rifle scope on here that has the ability to dial your elevation and windage and all that kind of stuff, and you dope the rifle properly, in an urban environment, we're not talking about ranges that you would when you're out in the desert and you're shooting thousands of yards or you're shooting 500 yards and beyond pretty regularly. For those of you who find what I'm saying hard to believe, walk outside your house if you live in a city with your rangefinder and shine that rangefinder as far as you can in any direction. And you're going to find, the vast majority of you, that no matter which direction you shine that rangefinder, if you live in an urban environment, it's not more than a few hundred yards. At most. Most of the time, it's much closer ranges than that. So having something like this from a fixed position dropped into a tripod with an appropriate optic would be an amazingly reliable designated marksman rifle, in my opinion. Okay? Some of you are going to find that hard to believe. In the future, I'll probably end up dropping a scope like that on it, and we'll see how far we can shoot an AK accurately, and I think you'll be pretty surprised. Anyway, so Those are some of the situations where I think this rifle would be well suited. Now, the situations where I think it would be a very poor choice. Any situation where you need to carry the rifle for a long distance, because of the weight aspects of it, there are better options. Also, any situation where you need to hold the rifle up for a prolonged period of time or transition the rifle quickly back and forth between targets, there are going to be a lot better options in the same AK platform than this rifle. That concludes my review and some of my thoughts and feelings about this particular rifle. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.